His name was Daniel. Not Danny. Not Dan. His mother had been very clear about that when she named him, and the one time his ex-wife called him Dan in front of her, his mother had looked at the woman the way you look at a fly that has landed on your food. His mother was gone now. 3 years. And the ex-wife was gone too, though in a different direction and for different reasons, and Daniel had stopped comparing the two losses because one of them still hurt, and the other one mostly just made him tired. He drove a cab. Not an app cab. An actual cab, yellow, scratched on the passenger side from a parking lot incident he did not want to think about, with a pine tree air freshener hanging from the mirror that had long since stopped smelling like anything except plastic. He drove it 12 hours a day, sometimes 14, through a city that never stopped asking things of people who had nothing left to give. He had a daughter named Zara. She was 7. She had his mother's eyes and her mother's stubbornness and a deep, inexplicable obsession with caterpillars that Daniel had stopped questioning around the time she named her third one and started keeping a notebook about their progress. The notebook had a sticker on the front that said science on it. She had put it there herself. Daniel had felt something so large move through his chest when he saw it that he had to leave the room and stand in the kitchen for a minute pretending to look for something in the refrigerator. He picked her up every night from Mrs. Yıldız's apartment on the 4th floor of their building. Mrs. Yıldız was 71, smelled of cardamom and hairspray, watched 3 soap operas simultaneously on a television the size of a dining table, and loved Zara with a ferocity that Daniel found both deeply reassuring and slightly alarming. She charged him less than anyone in the neighborhood would have, and when he tried to give her extra, she waved it away like a bad smell. He picked Zara up. He made dinner. He read her the caterpillar chapter of whatever book she was currently on. He waited until she was asleep. He sat at the kitchen table with whatever food was left over and ate it standing up, because sitting down felt like a commitment to stillness he couldn't afford. Then he did it all again. This had been his life for 4 years. There had been a version of his life before this one, but he had stopped telling Zara about it because she was too young to understand it, and he was too old to keep making it make sense. What he told her instead, when she asked about her mother, was that her mother was traveling. He had been telling her this for so long that sometimes, late at night when he was too tired to guard himself, he almost believed it. It was a Thursday when everything changed. Thursdays had always been his least favorite day. Not bad enough to be worth complaining about, not good enough to look forward to, just a long gray middle day that existed between the week's ambitions and its relief. He had been driving since 9 in the morning. It was now 11:40 at night. He was 3 blocks from the garage where he would park the cab when a woman stepped off the curb and raised her hand. He stopped. She got in before he could say anything. She was wearing a dress that had probably cost more than his monthly rent. It was dark blue, formal, the kind of thing people wear to events that have a name and a dress code and a guest list that somebody curated. She was holding her shoes in one hand, heels, gold, dangling by their straps. Her feet were bare on the cab floor, and he noticed there was a small cut above her collarbone, not deep, but recent, still a little red at the edges. She gave him an address. Her voice was steady. It was the voice of someone who had learned that tone is control, and who had practiced it so long that even in the back of a cab at midnight, barefoot and bleeding, she sounded like she was chairing a meeting. He drove. She did not speak. He did not speak. This was, in Daniel's experience, the best kind of passenger. He had driven people who wanted to process their entire relationship history before they reached their destination. He had driven people who wanted to know his opinions on geopolitics. He had driven a man once who spent 22 minutes describing in precise detail a dream he had had about a submarine. The woman in the blue dress simply sat and looked out the window at the city going past, and the silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of 2 people who had learned that words cost something. He was 3 minutes from her address when he heard it, or rather, he heard the absence of something. She had been breathing, a soft, almost inaudible presence. And then she wasn't. He knew the difference. He had driven an ambulance for 6 months, years ago, in a different version of his life, before the money ran out and the marriage started going wrong, and he became whoever he was now. He had learned in those 6 months that the body has a sound even at rest, a quality of presence, and when it stops there is a specific quality to that absence that the body itself recognizes before the mind does. He pulled over. He got out. He opened the back door. He checked her pulse. He found one. Barely. He did not think about what to do. He had learned in that ambulance year that thinking was something you did after. He tilted her head back. He breathed for her. 2 long, deliberate breaths, the kind you are trained to give. Not panicked, not rushed, controlled. Her eyes opened. She stared at him. There are moments in life that do not have a clean category. This was one of them. She looked at him the way people look at a light source when they have been in the dark for a long time. Not with gratitude exactly, not with recognition, but with the specific, unguarded attention of someone who has just been returned to their body and is still taking inventory of what they find there. He sat back. He called it in. She stopped him. "I'm fine," she said. "You were not breathing. I'm fine now." She sat up. She straightened the dress. She was looking at a point past his shoulder with an expression he could not read except to understand that it was costing her something to hold. He drove her the rest of the way. He waited until she was inside the building and the door had closed. He sat in the cab for a moment, looking at the building, which was the kind of building that had a doorman and a lobby with a plant that someone was paid specifically to keep alive. Then he went back to work. He found out who she was, the way everyone finds out everything now. Not because he looked. Her phone had fallen out of her bag when she got in, slid under the seat, and he found it the next morning when he was cleaning the cab. The screen lit up when he picked it up. 19 missed calls. 6 from someone named B, in capitals, just the letter. 2 from a number labeled Family Office. 11 from a name he did not recognize. And on the lock screen, because she had a news alert set, a notification from a financial publication with her photograph and her name. Nadia. He read the article for 30 seconds. He stopped. He read it again. He sat in the driver's seat of his cab for a long moment looking at the building's parking lot and the pigeons on the wire above it and a plastic bag doing slow loops in the wind. Then he put the phone in his glove box and drove to the garage. He thought about it all day. Not about who she was. That part was almost beside the point, the way a diagnosis is almost beside the point when you are already living with the condition. He thought about what he would do with the phone. He could hand it in to the cab company. He could leave it with the doorman at her building. He could, theoretically, look up her family office number and call it, and let someone who was paid to deal with these things deal with it. He thought about it through his morning fares and his afternoon fares, and through picking Zara up from Mrs. Yildiz and making dinner and reading about caterpillar metamorphosis for the 4th night in a row. He took the phone to her building the next evening. Not in a cab. He drove himself, in his own car, a 10-year-old silver thing with a cracked dashboard and a back seat that permanently smelled of Zara's fruit juice boxes. He parked outside. He walked to the door. He told the doorman he had something belonging to one of the residents. He didn't get the chance to leave it. She was in the lobby. She was in ordinary clothes this time. Dark trousers. A simple top. A scarf with a pattern he couldn't name from where he stood, but which was the color of autumn leaves. She was talking to someone at the reception desk, and she looked up when he walked in, and there was a half-second where her face did not show anything at all, and then it showed something, and then it closed again. She walked over. "You found it," she said. "Under the seat." She took it. She looked at it. She looked at him. "I should give you something," she said. "No. You saved my life last night. I did my job. Driving a cab is your job," she said. Not that. He had nothing to say to this, so he said nothing. He was good at nothing. He had been practicing it for 4 years. "At least let me buy you coffee," she said. "I don't drink coffee. Tea. I'm fine." "You literally breathed air into my body," she said. "You can drink 1 cup of tea." He drank the tea. They sat in a place around the corner that had small wooden tables and too many plants, and a chalkboard menu written in a handwriting so stylized it was almost unreadable. She ordered tea for both of them, without asking what kind he wanted, and he noticed this but did not say anything about it, and when the tea arrived it was exactly what he would have chosen. She asked him his name. He told her. She told him hers, and he said he knew, and she said she figured, and that was the end of that conversation. "How did you know what to do?" she asked. He told her about the ambulance, months. One sentence. She did not ask for more, which he noticed, because most people ask for more. "I'm sorry," she said. "About last night. You shouldn't have had to deal with that. Is it going to happen again?" She was quiet for a moment. "Probably not," she said. He looked at her. She looked at her tea. "Probably not is a strange thing to say," he told her. "It's an honest thing to say." He drove home. He picked Zara up. He stood in the kitchen eating cold rice and thinking about the way Nadia had said probably not, with the studied calm of someone who has rehearsed saying it until it sounds like a fact instead of a prayer. She found him again 4 days later. He was parked outside a hotel, last in a line of cabs waiting for the evening crowd, when she appeared at the passenger window. She was in a coat this time, the collar turned up against the cold, and she was carrying a small paper bag. "I found something," she said. She held the bag up. He opened the window. Inside the bag, wrapped in a piece of newspaper, was a photograph. It had been in the cab. He had missed it when he cleaned. It was a picture of Zara, taken at her school last year, wearing her uniform and the expression of someone who has been asked to smile and has decided to cooperate with this request while making their feelings about it perfectly clear. He kept it tucked behind the sun visor, and it must have fallen when he pulled over that night. He took it. He looked at it. He was aware, in a way he could not account for and did not want to examine, that the expression on his face when he looked at the photograph was the kind that shouldn't be seen by strangers. "She looks like she has opinions," Nadia said. "About everything," he said. "How old?" 7. She nodded. She looked at the photograph in his hand, and then at him, and then back at the photograph. She did not ask about Zara's mother. He noticed this the same way he had noticed the tea. "Why are you here?" he asked. Not unkindly, just honestly. She thought about this for longer than he expected. "I'm not sure," she said. "I think I wanted to see who you were when I wasn't unconscious." "Same person." "People usually aren't," she said. He didn't argue with that. He had known enough people to know she was right. She asked if she could ride. "Not to a destination," she said, "just to ride." He told her the meter would run. She said that was fine. He started the car. They went around the city for an hour. She sat in the back and looked out the window and asked him questions that were not the questions strangers usually asked. She did not ask what he thought about the news. She did not ask if he had ever had any interesting passengers. She asked him what Zara's caterpillars were called. She asked him if he listened to music while he drove, and if so, what kind. She asked him what the city looked like at different times of day, and which was his favorite, and he said 4 in the morning, which surprised him. He hadn't known that about himself until he said it. He asked her almost nothing. This was partly politeness and partly something else. A sense that whatever she was carrying it in a particular way, and the wrong question at the wrong moment would shift the weight of it, and that was not his place. She came back the next week, and the week after. Always in the evening, always with some small pretext that neither of them believed. She'd left something else in the cab. She happened to be in the area. She was curious about a neighborhood he'd mentioned. He stopped pointing out that the pretexts didn't hold up. She stopped inventing convincing ones. They arrived at a kind of mutual understanding that did not have a name and did not need one. She told him about Lagos, not all at once, in pieces, over 3 different evenings. A semester she had spent there studying architecture, she said. The only time in her adult life she had lived in a place where her last name was just a last name. She had walked to the market alone in the mornings. She had eaten things she couldn't identify and loved most of them. She had been so happy in a way that she said was the wrong word, because happy was too thin a word for it. She had been herself, she said. Just herself, with nothing attached. He told her about his mother. 1 sentence. She had loved coffee so strong it made other people's hands shake. She had opinions about every world leader who had been alive in her lifetime and was not shy about sharing them. She had called Daniel every Sunday at 10 in the morning until she couldn't, and now Sunday mornings had a shape to them that he couldn't fill. Nadia didn't say she was sorry. She said, "The Sundays are the worst part." He hadn't said anything about Sundays. She knew anyway. He started noticing things he had not noticed about himself in years. He noticed that he had stopped listening to music when he drove, and had not registered when that happened. He noticed that he had not sat through a meal in about 2 years, that he always ate standing or in transit. He noticed that the last time someone had asked him a question they genuinely wanted the answer to, not a question about Zara's school, or the cab company's insurance policy, or whether he needed anything from the shop. He could not remember when that had been. He noticed that he looked forward to Thursdays now. He did not do anything with this information. He put it somewhere at the back of himself, the way you put something in a drawer that you know you will have to deal with eventually, but are not ready for today. Then the Tuesday happened. He had parked outside a closed laundromat on a side street. He often parked there between fares. It was quiet. Nobody bothered him. It was raining in the particular committed way it rains in autumn. Not dramatically, just thoroughly. As if the sky had decided this was its job and it was going to do it all day. She had texted. She had his number by then, the way people get each other's numbers without anyone making a decision about it, and asked if he was working. He said yes. She asked where. He told her. She appeared 12 minutes later, in a coat she was holding closed at the front, because she had apparently forgotten to button it, her hair damp at the edges. She got in the front this time, not the back. He noticed this too. He was noticing everything now and filing it all away in that drawer, and the drawer was getting very full. They sat for a while. The rain did its thing on the windshield. He had the heat on low. She had unwound her scarf and was turning it in her hands. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Okay." She took a breath. "What happened in the cab that Thursday night," she said, "wasn't the first time. It had happened before, 3 times in the past 2 years. The condition had a name. She used the medical term quickly, like ripping off a bandage. A rare arrhythmia, a problem with the electrical signals in her heart, a thing that the cardiologist had been tracking and treating and being careful about. Except being careful about it was not the same as fixing it, and it had been progressing, and there was a procedure that could help. The success rate was reasonable, but she had not scheduled it yet. She stopped talking. He waited. She said she had not told her family. She said she had not told anyone, not fully, not the way she was telling him right now. She said the doctors knew, they had to, but beyond that she had been managing it alone, and managing it in the particular way she managed everything, which was by constructing around it a very convincing version of herself that had everything handled. "Why are you telling me?" he asked. "The rain." "Because," she said, "you already know. You were there, and I'm tired of the people who weren't there believing the other version." He sat with this. He gripped the steering wheel with both hands. He looked at the laundromat's closed sign, the rain on the window, a streetlight making a pale orange smear on the wet pavement. He felt something moving through him that he recognized but had not visited in a while. Not anger at her, nothing like that, but a kind of sharp grief for the particular loneliness of what she had just described. The loneliness of constructing a convincing version of yourself that has everything handled. He knew that room. He had been living in it for 4 years. He did not say any of this. He said, "What do you need?" She looked at him. It was the way she had looked at him in the back of the cab that first night, the unguarded attention of someone being returned to their body, except this time she was wide awake. He called her the next morning. He said he had been thinking about it. She said she had been thinking about it too. He said he would drive her to the appointment whenever she scheduled it if she wanted company. She said she didn't need company. He said he knew that. He said he was offering anyway. She said she would think about it. 3 days later her brother showed up at Daniel's building. He knew it was her brother before the man introduced himself because the bone structure was the same. The eyes were the same, and the car he arrived in was a sleek gray thing that Daniel had never seen in real life, except in magazine photographs. The brother's name was Rayan. He was polite. He was well-dressed in the way that people are well-dressed when they have never had to think about being well-dressed. He asked if they could talk. They talked in the hallway outside Daniel's apartment because Daniel did not invite him in. Zara was inside watching a documentary about insects. Rayan was not cruel about it. That was, Daniel realized, what made it hard. If the man had been cruel, it would have been simple. You close the door on cruelty and it's done. But Rayan was measured and precise and genuinely, Daniel thought, not without love for his sister. He spoke about her medical trust, which Daniel had never heard of, and which apparently governed certain financial protections tied to decisions about her life and the people in it. He spoke about liability, which was a word that appeared 3 times and which each time meant Daniel. He spoke about what was best for Nadia, and the phrase "what was best for Nadia" was doing a great deal of work in those sentences, holding up all the things he was not quite saying. He did not threaten Daniel, he just described a world. It was a world with a great deal in it: property, and trust structures, and board opinions, and a family history Daniel had no part in. And in that world there was no reasonable space for a cab driver with a 7-year-old daughter and a car with a cracked dashboard. He described it all very reasonably. Daniel thanked him. He closed the door. He stood in the hallway on his side of it for a moment. He could hear the insect documentary through the door. Zara was asking one of her questions out loud to the television, which she did when she was very interested in something. He pressed his forehead to the door for 3 seconds. Then he went inside. He did not call Nadia that evening. He did not call her the next evening. He was building something in himself. Not a decision exactly, more like a reckoning, the kind where you hold 2 truths in your hands at the same time and feel their weight and try to understand which one you can live without. Truth 1. Rayan was right. Not about all of it, but about the world he had described. That world existed. Daniel could not pretend it didn't, because he had been living in his version of it for long enough to know exactly what it weighed. Truth 2. He could not be the man who said the lady was traveling. Not again. Not this time. He knew he had done it once. With Zara, with the story about her mother, with the 4-year lie he had wrapped around his daughter to protect her from something he could not explain. He understood why he had done it. He had done it the way you do things that are wrong, because the alternative was a shape you could not see clearly yet, and wrong but familiar was at least something you could hold. He was done with wrong but familiar. Zara asked about the lady with the pretty scarf. It was a Wednesday. He was putting her to bed. She had asked him the question before, in the way children ask questions they have been thinking about, sideways, at bedtime, with their eyes already soft. "Where did she go?" Zara asked. He sat on the edge of the bed. He thought about what he was going to say. He thought about it for what felt like a long time, and was probably only a few seconds. He thought about his mother on Sunday mornings. He thought about the insect notebook with the science sticker. He thought about the phrase, "What do you need?" and what it had cost him to ask it, and what it meant that it had been the right thing to say. "She's around," he said. "I just haven't seen her in a few days." It was not the whole truth. It was not a lie. Zara looked at him. "She's nice," Zara said. "Yeah," he said. "She is." He knew where Nadia's appointment was because she had mentioned it once. The name of the cardiologist, the name of the hospital. It had come out between 2 other sentences she probably hadn't meant to finish. He had remembered it the way you remember something your body decides is important before your mind gets around to it. He did not call ahead. He did not send a message. He showed up, not with anything, no flowers, no coffee, no prepared thing to say. He had, in his jacket pocket, Zara's drawing of a caterpillar. It had been on the refrigerator held up by a magnet shaped like a tomato, and he had taken it down that morning with no clear plan except that it felt right. The drawing was in crayon, mostly green, with an expression on the caterpillar's face that Zara had given it, which was one of very serious concentration. He sat in the waiting room. It was the kind of hospital waiting room that had been designed to feel calm. Pale walls, good chairs, a plant in the corner that was definitely real and definitely being tended to by someone who cared about it. He sat in a chair near the window. He did not look at his phone. He watched the door. He waited for 40 minutes. She came through the door, and she saw him immediately, and she stopped walking. She looked at him standing there in his jacket with his cab driver's hands and his usual face. She looked at the waiting room around him, as if trying to understand how he fit into it. Then she crossed to where he was. He held out the drawing. She took it. She looked at it for a long moment. She turned it over once, as if checking for something on the back. Then she folded it very carefully. Once, twice, and slid it into her coat pocket. Her hand rested against her chest for just a second above where she'd put it. "How did you know?" she asked. "You mentioned it." "I mentioned the name of the doctor. You mentioned the hospital too, and the day." She looked at him. "I wasn't hiding it," she said. "I know," he said. "I think you were testing whether someone was listening." Something shifted in her face. Very slightly. The thing she kept carefully calibrated shifted for just a moment, and underneath it was something that did not have the practiced steadiness she usually showed the world. "What did the doctor say?" He asked. "The procedure has a 74% success rate," she said. He looked at her. "I drove a cab for 6 years," he said. "On worse odds than that." She laughed. Not the polite laugh, not the social one, not the one that said, "I acknowledge your attempt at lightness." The real one, the one that came from somewhere lower, that surprised her on its way out, that she hadn't planned. He had not heard it before. He had not known it existed. She covered it with her hand for a second, then let it go. She looked at him with the unguarded thing still slightly showing. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know. Rayan told me he came to see you. I know. And you're here anyway." "I'm not here to argue with any of it," he said. "Not the trust, not your brother, not the world he described. I'm not here to fix it, or fight it, or tell you it doesn't matter." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm just here." She looked at him for a long time. She had spent a long time, he understood, maybe her whole adult life, in rooms full of people who were there because of what was attached to her name, to her family's history, to the number her father's lawyers would quote if pressed. She had gone to Lagos to escape it, and she had come back because that was what you did, and she had spent the years since constructing the carefully handled version of herself. She had been keeping her own heart secret from the people closest to her for 2 years. She did not know what to do with someone who showed up with a child's drawing and no plan. "You're very strange," she said. "I have been told." The procedure was scheduled for the following month. He drove her there. He sat in that same waiting room for 3.5 hours. He drank the bad hospital coffee, which he did not tell her because he had said he didn't drink coffee, and at this point that detail felt important to protect. He read a magazine about kitchen remodeling that he had absolutely no interest in and could not have told you anything about afterwards. He sat in the chair. He waited. She came out. She was pale and a little unsteady, and she had clearly been crying at some point in the past hour and was clearly not going to mention this. He did not mention it either. He took her arm when she was slightly unsteady on the 3rd step, and she let him, and then she was steady, and he let go. He drove her home. He did not stay. He made sure she was inside, and he got back in the car and he drove home, and he picked up Zara from Mrs. Yildiz, and Zara asked about the caterpillars, and he answered, and he made dinner, and he stood in the kitchen eating it. The next week, Nadia called him. She said the early results were good. She said the cardiologist had used the word encouraging twice in the same appointment, which was, apparently, very unlike him. She said her voice was slightly different when she said this. Not the managed voice, not the practiced one, just her voice. "That's good," he said. "Yes," she said, "it is." "Are you going to tell your family?" he asked. "All of it." A silence. "I told Rayan," she said. "Yesterday." "How was that?" "He cried," she said, "which I was completely unprepared for. He's not a crier. People surprise you. Apparently." He did not see her for 3 weeks after that. Not because anything was wrong, because they were both people who understood that some things need room to breathe, and they gave this one the room it needed. He drove his fares. He picked up Zara. He read the caterpillar chapters. He ate standing in the kitchen. He noticed, at some point, that he had started listening to music again when he drove. Old music, mostly. His mother's music. He did not examine this too closely. Nadia was dealing with her family, with her doctors, with the careful dismantling of the version of herself she had built for 2 years. He understood that this was not a small thing and did not require his involvement, and that understanding this was itself a form of care. One evening she texted him, "The caterpillar drawing is still in my coat pocket." He did not reply immediately. He thought about what to say. He wrote back, "She'll want it back eventually. She's very attached." A pause. Then, "Tell her I'm keeping it safe." He showed Zara the message. Zara read it 3 times. She looked at Daniel with the expression she used when processing serious information. "She's keeping it safe," Zara said. "That's what she said." Zara nodded, satisfied, and went back to her notebook. The summer came slowly the way summer does, not arriving so much as accumulating, a degree at a time, until one morning you realize the coats are wrong and the windows need to be open. Daniel saved enough money, over the course of those months, to take Zara to see the ocean. She had never seen the ocean. He had not told Nadia about the trip. It was not a secret, it just had not come up. They were talking more by then. Calls in the evening sometimes, messages during the day, the easy texture of 2 people who had stopped needing pretexts. She knew Zara was obsessed with caterpillars, and that he ate standing up, and that he had been lying to his daughter for years about her mother, which he had told her one evening in a conversation he had not planned and which she had held very carefully. She knew about the ambulance months. Not more than that one sentence, but she knew. He did not know she knew about the ocean trip until they got there and she was already standing on the beach. She was there before them, standing at the waterline in ordinary clothes, her shoes in her hand, because apparently that was a thing she did, looking out at the water. The scarf with the autumn leaf colors was around her neck in the warm wind. He stopped walking when he saw her. Zara ran ahead. Zara reached the waterline and stopped. She looked at the ocean. She looked at it the way she looked at things she needed to think about very seriously. She looked back at Daniel. She looked at Nadia. Nadia crouched down to her level. "I'm Nadia," she said. "I know," Zara said. "You have my drawing." "I do," Nadia said. "Do you want it back?" Zara thought about this with the seriousness it deserved. "You can keep it a little longer," she said. "I made another one." She turned back to the ocean and put her feet in the water up to her ankles and stood there, looking at it the way you look at something enormous that you suspected existed but had not understood until now. Daniel walked to the waterline. He stood next to Nadia. The waves came and went the way they always had, indifferent and reliable, doing their one thing with total commitment. None of them said anything about what came next. The future, Daniel had learned, had a way of being where you already were. You did not find it. You did not plan your way to it. You stood somewhere with the right people and the right amount of honesty, and the waves came in, and the waves went out, and there it was. Zara said, without turning around, in the voice she used when she was recording observations in her notebook, "The water is cold." "Yes," Daniel said. "But I like it," she said. Nadia looked at him. He looked at Nadia. They stood at the edge of the water in the warm wind, with a 7-year-old scientist between them and the ocean, going on in all directions, and said nothing. They didn't have to. Some things you live through because you have no choice, and some things you live through because something in you decides, without asking permission, that you are not done yet. Daniel had been the first kind for a long time. He had driven his 12-hour days and eaten standing up, and told his daughter the traveling story, and worn the exhaustion of a man holding everything with both hands, because there was nobody else to hold it. He was still that man. He would probably always be that man in some ways. You do not stop being the person that life shaped you into, just because something shifts. He still drove the cab. He still picked Zara up at midnight. He still stood in the kitchen. He still had Sunday mornings with a shape he was learning to fill differently. But he was also standing on a beach he had saved up for, next to a woman who had his daughter's drawing folded against her heart, and the water was cold and they liked it. That was enough. That was, in fact, more than enough. It was something he had stopped knowing how to want and then been given anyway, not because the world became fair or because his story became easy, but because he had stopped telling the traveling story, at least to himself, and that turned out to be the thing that changed everything. Zara's caterpillar emerged from its chrysalis in October. She called Daniel into her room at 6:30 in the morning, serious as a doctor, to look at it. She had the notebook open. She had already made an entry. The caterpillar, now a moth, small and brown, and slightly bewildered by existence, which Daniel found relatable, was sitting on the wall of the jar she kept it in, opening and closing its wings very slowly. "She made it," Zara said. "She did," Daniel said. He crouched next to his daughter and looked at the moth doing its careful, patient work of being a new thing. "She had to be patient," Zara said. "It takes a long time." "It does," Daniel said. "But then you're different," Zara said. "You're a completely different thing." She wrote this in the notebook very carefully. Then she looked at it, satisfied, and closed the notebook with the science sticker on the front. Daniel stayed crouched there a moment longer, looking at the moth. He thought about a woman flagging him down on a Thursday night in a city that never stopped asking things of people who had nothing left to give. He thought about rain on a laundromat window. He thought about a drawing folded against a chest. He thought about Sunday mornings, and cold ocean water, and the question he had learned to ask, "What do you need?" The moth opened its wings one more time. It sat there in the early morning light of a 7-year-old's bedroom, completely unaware of what it had been before. Daniel stood up. He went to make breakfast.